The most recent space news includes Sierra Space developing their inflatable habitat technology, SpaceX working on a Starship fuel tanker prototype while waiting for a test launch date, and NASA announcing plans to expand the Kennedy Space Center, which may include a new star factory. While waiting for the next Starship test flight as SpaceX waits for the bureaucratic red tape to be cleared. At Starbase Boca Chica, the engineers are active. The SpaceX team is just continuing to work on site improvements, such as the creation and testing of new prototype starships, in a pretty typical manner. For instance, Ship 26 was recently observed working at the test stand, which is located next to the orbital launch mount. Since we haven't truly seen Ship 26 in a while, some people are perplexed by this most recent view. As you can see, this prototype lacks even heat shield tiles and flaps. Neither Starlink dispensers nor cargo bay doors exist. The same things were evident in earlier sightings of Ship 26, but at the time it was too early to determine if those features had not yet been added. To be honest, they still might be, but given that Ship 26 seems to be getting ready for a static fire test, it's much more likely that we are witnessing the debut of a test piece for one of the key systems in the SpaceX ecosystem, the depot for Starship orbital fuel. The plan is to construct a spaceship that is nothing more than a giant gasoline tank, which the corporation will launch into low Earth orbit and keep full in case another spacecraft needs more fuel for a longer journey. A fuel tanker variety would support all of SpaceX's planned Starship variations, including a crew type, an uncrewed cargo type, a lander, and even versions that may be used to build space stations. Although it may be too soon to determine the actual purpose of Ship 26, its lack of fins or heat shield tiles as it readies for static fire would seem to indicate that 26 is not designed to return to Earth. Additionally, the timetable for the orbital refueling demonstration that SpaceX is required to conduct lines up with their testing of a prospective fuel tanker version of its Starship. It might have been misplaced among the commotion of testing and FAA inquiries. However, one of the main drivers behind the rush to complete a second Starship test flight was that the company is pressed for time to complete the project in time to take part in Artemis lunar mission, particularly Artemis 3, for which NASA has contracted the company's Starship version human landing system. A NASA astronaut crew is scheduled to travel to the lunar South Pole in 2025 on board the SpaceX HLS. NASA wants SpaceX to demonstrate a few things before that can happen, though. The first is, of course, the fact that their Starship can really enter orbit. In addition, the lander variation can, land, according to the same thought. However, using a Starship fuel tanker to replenish while in orbit is the other crucial test for the Starship ecosystem. And if SpaceX is to keep Artemis 3 on track, it necessitates the completion of the testing phase for both the lander and the fuel depot vehicles in 2024. As a result, we ought to be seeing prototypes for those two spacecraft soon. However, if, for example, Ship 26 isn't intended to test how Starship's fuel handles being in orbit for extended periods of time, then we can't see many outside evidence of new technology. Then a number of internal tanks and a few sensors would be all that's required. Some people have also suggested that this ship be used to test the maneuverability of an orbiting fuel depot using its reaction control thrusters. While this variant could test this without requiring many obvious upgrades, it is unlikely to be testing the fuel depot's actual refueling capabilities because it doesn't appear to have any kind of ship-to-ship docking collars. While we wait for word of the upcoming Starship launch, it is heartening to see Ship 26 being worked on. As we previously mentioned, SpaceX is also on a very tight timetable and cannot afford to wait around while authorities conduct investigations and environmental studies. It's fortunate that the SpaceX team will have much to do in the interim. NASA unveiled a plan for the Kennedy Space Center's expansion on September 12, requesting the public to offer feedback on the planned facilities. The document described a number of enhancements for the busy spaceport, not the least of which was an over 100-acre extension of the SpaceX Roberts Road site close to Pad 39A, where the company currently constructs its orbital launch vehicle for Starship and launches the majority of its Falcon 9 aircraft. The fleet of Falcon 9 rockets that SpaceX operates from Pad 39A are now maintained on its roughly 50-acre plot at the Roberts Road location. This makes a lot of sense because it would be begging for delays and potential accidents to transfer even a strong rocket like the Falcon 9 from a different location. In the same vein, it seems likely that SpaceX would eventually want to increase the size of their facilities on the Florida coast in order to at least make room for the upkeep of an operational fleet of Starships. even via barge. It seems like a really bad idea to ship the biggest rocket ever built from Texas to Florida, and NASA evidently agreed. The expansion largely adheres to the original concept presented in 2020, which was developed in stages as these lengthy construction projects frequently are. Even back then, SpaceX had plans to at least expand its Falcon 9 program and was aware that someday it would require more space. The site's northern expansion will be largely occupied by a sizable new hangar, which is most likely to be a new Starship maintenance and production facility, similar to the Star Factory at Boca Chica, as the corporation has since acquired a new Starship-flavored Focus. The task at hand appears to be rather simple. Early in 2021, when the facility's first phase of construction was completed, the majority of the literal groundwork was completed. Electrical, water, and internet connectivity are already there and would just need to be extended slightly northward. According to the supplemental environmental assessment NASA provided in their statement, the extension won't offer any major environmental challenges. However, a much bigger issue is the proposed expansion of the Saturn Causeway, an 8-meter-wide road that connects the historic vehicle assembly building to Pad 39A, and which SpaceX hoped to use to transport their Starship from the new facility to the pad. The real issue is the gas line routing, which is always a pain even in less industrial construction. The Starship's wider than the Saturn rocket's dimensions are an issue. The Starship's actual diameter is 9 meters, thus it would hang over the road. They ask that the old causeway be widened by 10.3 meters so that Starship and its SPM transport vehicles can pass through. But even these ostensibly challenging engineering problems are nothing to be concerned about in the big scheme of things. Comparatively speaking, it is much simpler to dig gas lines and widen highways than to organize an environmental survey. But since that element has already been completed, SpaceX only needs to wait for the public comment period to end in order to move forward. And if no significant problem is raised by local homeowners by October 16th, NASA will make a final determination, and SpaceX will be able to begin organizing their next large construction project. The fifth test of Sierra Space's inflatable life module took place on September 20th in Hawaii, and the test object was a complete success. The Large Integrated Flexible Environment is an inflatable habitation module made primarily of cloth that may unfold during an orbital trip. The 330 cubic meter module was created by Sierra to be utilized on the forthcoming Blue Origin-led Orbital Reef Space Station project, as well as with their crewed spacecraft Dream Chaser for missions lasting longer. Burst tests, which, as the name would suggest, entail inflating the HAB until it pops, are typically used to evaluate the design at the moment on smaller, subscale replicas of the actual thing. In this test, a metallic plate meant to represent a window that will be incorporated into the design in the final version was added. However, contrary to what one might expect, the metal plate actually added strength, enabling the inflatable module to withstand a full 20% more pressure than in previous tests, and an overall 33% margin of safety above the certification standard for this type of crewed spa. This clearly delighted Sierra Space's engineering team, who had been eager to pass the string of gating tests so they may proceed to a complete in-orbit demonstration. Although there are many advantages to inflatable modules, there simply haven't been enough real-world tests of them to give people more confidence. This is understandable given the strict testing requirements for fabric-based systems. The Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, or BEAM, built by Bigelow Aerospace and deployed to the ISS back in 2016, stayed there until 2020, was the only inflatable HAB ever tested in space. That experiment was successful and revealed some unexpected benefits of inflatable modules. The first is a bit evident. The inflatable nature of the module eliminates the need for aerodynamic design, allowing it to be simply crammed into the rocket's fuselage until launch. The second is that the majority of these modules are constructed from sheets of fabric that are overlapped, including Kevlar, Mylar, and, in the case of Sierra's Life module, a fabric called Vectran that becomes stiff when inflated. In comparison to even the more conventional hard-shell aluminum designs, this gives the module greater protection against debris attacks. Finally, depending on how they were built, some designs even had higher radiation protection. The problem, of course, is that they are a novel technology, and people get a little queasy when you tell them that all you have between you and space is a scrap of fabric. In order to thoroughly verify for any engineering flaws in the new Sierra Space module, a series of experiments are being carried out one after the other. The crew will need another 12 months to complete designing their flying hardware after spending the next 24 months through this testing gauntlet. It's difficult to resist being carried up in the excitement of the Sierra team. They are aware of their cool new technology. Visit us again each week for more information on the aerospace industry and interstellar travel. If you like the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up today. It really helps. Subscribe the Cosmic Era for more similar videos.